Hey, warriors. So there's a belief floating around in spirituality that once you wake up, life becomes lighter, freer, not freer, we'll say smoother, that it becomes more problem free. Okay. And I want to talk about why that's not only untrue, but why believing it can actually cause more suffering. Okay. Because for many people, the opposite happens. Life doesn't get quieter, it gets clearer. Okay. And let me put it to you this way: awakening doesn't remove the problems, it removes the numbness before that awareness comes. Okay. You know, and before that awareness, we are coping, we're suppressing, we're distracting. We normalize things that hurt us, right? When awareness comes online, those buffers, they disappear. You with me? And it's not because we're being punished. I say this constantly, but because you finally can handle seeing reality clearly, right? Um, you're not suddenly, surrounded by more negativity. That's not what's happening. Um, you're just no longer unconscious of it, you know? Um, okay, so here's the key shift, I guess. Awareness expands your capacity. You begin to notice emotional patterns, relational dynamics, manipulation. Do you know what I mean? Internal resistance, that unresolved fear, you know? Um, but before you needed protection from them, right? Now you don't. That's growth. The mistake people make, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is resisting what they now see. And that's where the suffering is coming in. People think, I'm spiritual, this shouldn't be here. So they resist. Okay? There's anger, sadness, fear, confusion, darkness, contrast, and resistance creates the illusion of problems. You still with me, I hope? And it's not the thing itself, but the belief that it shouldn't exist. Okay? And that part, okay, so this part right here is important. Allowing something to exist doesn't mean that you're approving of it, identifying with it. It doesn't mean you're becoming passive, It means you stop fighting reality. Okay? You let contrast be contrast. You understand? Um you let shadow be seen. You let emotions move. And paradoxically, that's what dissolves them. You understand? Um Awareness, is neutral. But when it's new, it feels heavy, right? Um And I mean, why is that? It's because you're integrating truth, you're releasing illusion, feeling things that you once avoided, those kinds of things, learning to regulate, learning regulation instead of escape, you know, that's stabilization, plain and simple. Um, I don't know, like turning on lights to a messy room. The mess didn't appear, you just stopped living in the dark. I hope I'm making sense. I always say this. Um, but most problems aren't problems, I guess is what I'm trying to say. They're friction, they're friction caused by resistance. Okay? And the moment you stop saying this shouldn't be happening or whatever, and start saying, this is here, what's being revealed? You understand? That struggle softens. Making sense? I hope I'm making sense. It's like, okay, so clarity replaces drama, choice replaces reaction, presence replaces control. Right? I hope I'm making sense. People who are, okay, so people who are deeply unconscious often appear happier. You understand? I hope I'm making sense. But it's because they're buffered, if you will. People who are waking up feel more because they're available. You understand? That doesn't mean life is worse. It means you're no longer outsourcing your power to avoidance. You're present, you know? Um I don't know. Real spirituality, isn't about constant peace. It's about non-resistance. I guess is where I'm going with this. It's the ability to let light and shadow coexist. Clarity and confusion overlap, joy and grief share space, without collapsing, without bypassing, without, self judgment. That's freedom. You understand? You know, I, I don't know. I guess I'm just saying if life is feeling harder since you became more aware, that doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong, It means you're seeing clearly, and clarity requires fucking courage, dude. Look at what we're looking at. I don't know. The goal was never to have no problems, The goal was to stop fighting reality. And when resistance ends, so does suffering, you know? And that's also how you become that co creator of your reality. I love you guys.